Right. Welcome to the July 10th, 2024 meeting of the Redmond Planning Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Aparna.
Present.
Commissioner Coleman.
Present.
Commissioner Copley.
Present.
Commissioner Van Nyman.
Present.
Vice Chair Woodyear.
Present.
And I am Chair Weston. Commissioner Gagne is excused. I'd like to thank the following staff for being present tonight: Glenn Coyle, Becky Fry, Lisa Rigg, Ann Dettelbach, Peter Holt, and Chris Wyatt. I look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Oh.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, that's approved. The original motion was, yeah, there we go. Thank you. All right, next is public comment and items for the audience.
There were no speakers signed up tonight.
Oh, okay, great. Well, then we will move right along to the main item on the docket, which is the study session on the water system plan and the general wastewater plan for Redmond 2050.
Tell Brian to turn his camera off.
Oh, sure. Commissioner Copley, would you ever mind turning your camera off? There's a lot of background motion. There we go. Thank you. It looks big on the
Sorry
big.
about that.
Yeah, on the big screens here, it's actually noticeable. Thanks. All right. Thank you.
Got enough space. Good evening. So I'm Lisa Rigg, back again for the water system plan. And Jeff Thompson is out of the office this week, so I'll be trying to answer any questions on the sewer plan, but I think we're in good shape on that. So this evening, I'd like to go through the three remaining items in the updated issues matrix that were not closed at our previous meeting, and see if we can discuss those and close them if possible, and then follow up with the discussion of recommendation statements for items that were identified in our previous discussions. So our aim is to work out the wording that is going to be satisfactory to the commission for any recommendations. And we're not planning at this time to reopen the closed items, but understand that there may be follow-up questions that or comments that you want included in the meeting record.
I think our closed items will stay closed. So
Okay,
we're really looking at those three open issues
Perfect. Okay.
for tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So the outstanding comments we have are number 2, 12, and 16. And I incorporated your follow-up questions into number 2 because they seemed like that was pretty much where they fit. So, let's see. So the follow-up questions we had were, when will Cascade Water Alliance publish a current transmission and supply plan?
Could we actually show these on the screen? Is that possible?
Sure. I'm not actually in the meeting. Let me join the meeting.
And actually, if possible, while you're bringing that up, I just want to set a little bit of framing for what we're going to discuss tonight. So just because there's been a lot of offline conversation and email this since the last meeting, and I just want to kind of bring us all up to date. Commissioners did receive this in email before, but I just, again, want to say it so that we can kind of roll out. So I think my summary of where things were left is that we had these three open issues, but some of them really pointed at there's concern about not the water plan itself, but the premise of the water plan, which is that a significant portion, an increasing portion of our water comes from Cascade Water Alliance, which we're one of 7 cities that form that membership. They were created in 1999. They created a deal with the city of Seattle to provide water in addition to the water that Redmond receives from its wells in the Cara. in 2003. That was updated in 2013. And then since then, the issue that sort of sparked a lot of concern in the email thread was that there was an update to that plan expected in 2019, but instead it was delayed until 2022. And then there's been a second delay until 2025, which we're in the middle of now. But without that, we don't have updated supply or demand numbers. And so the idea was to figure out whether or not we had enough information from Cascade that we could make a recommendation tonight with confidence that supports the comp plan. So things that we can't control here tonight, we can't control budget. That's not under our purview. We cannot control what Cascade does. But if we feel like there are risk factors that the council needs to know about, then we can talk about that if we feel that it would affect the comp plan. So that's a brief summary of the conversations offline. And I think with that, now we can jump into the questions. And I really wanted to appreciate Lisa and the folks at Cascade for tracking this down, because there was a lot of scramble here. And I think there was really great information that came out of this conversation. So just thank you for the extra effort.
Oh, you're very welcome. Happy to provide it. All right, so the first question again was, when will Cascade Water Alliance publish a current transmission and supply plan? And
if I can just summarize what I understand of this answer. So there's a new one coming in 2025?
yes,
And that will follow a hopeful agreement that was just authorized in May by the board of Cascade to arrange a new contract with the city of Tacoma. This is a new water source for us that would last 20 years until we can get further along in the development of Lake Taps.
that is correct. Yes. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please, actually.
How do they get 6 years behind? Because, I mean, when you're saying, is there a risk? Like, well, being 6 years behind seems like a bit of a red flag.
This was one of my biggest concerns. This isn't a good answer per se, but it's my sense of it, because I read as much as I could find over the last week. I think people got a little bit complacent after the 2013 numbers. There was a real downward trend in usage in our area, mostly due to conservation. And things looked good. And I think there might have also been a leadership shift. What I'm looking for here is momentum towards an actual resolution of that behindness. Because it's definitely a 7-year gap isn't when we need those numbers for this planning cycle is tough.
And to add a little bit of that, and it's we'll put it in the updated matrix, but during that time, it became an option to buy. There was excess water supply from both City of Seattle and Tacoma Water, and so the option of being able to do a new contract with one of those bodies for the purchase of water became a reality. And so they were able to move forward with that at the same time, keeping Lake Taps as an option, and it as the future option. Eventually it will be developed, but this allowed, by being able to explore these other contracts, they were able to basically confidently move forward with delaying development of Lake Taps. And so there were contract offers basically from both Tacoma Water and Seattle Water, and so it's really just a matter of which one is the best for the members of Cascade.
But I believe Seattle is off the table at this point.
Right, they're
as
moving
of May.
forward with Tacoma, yes, because it's a much better deal.
What I thought I heard you saying is that what was delayed initially 3 years and then another 3 years was
4 years and then 3 years.
the plan and the schedule, no? Like, you're talking contracts, and what I thought I heard was like, this is our future of
It's a very good question. That's the height of my concern.
Yeah,
And I just want to pull us back into Redmond's document and what we're looking at and for today. Their process and their what isn't necessarily the purview of what we can regulate. What we need to focus on for the conversation today is our document. But
So I actually disagree with that because I think that risk of Cascades management is the premise. Like, if we don't agree with that, then we can't agree that we have the water coming starting in 2040.
correct, but they couldn't update their plan if they're changing their water source. So they needed to go through the contract negotiation to get the water source so they could update the plan. So the information we have from them now is they're in the middle of that because now they've identified, and so they're wrapping in PSRC's regional-wide allocations, they're wrapping in climate change, they're in the middle of their climate change study. So all of that being the said on their side, we just need to refocus on our document if we can.
Commissioner, we'll start with Commissioner Aparna and then Vice Chair Woodyer.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Becky. So I actually, taking a step back, the water plan seems like a good plan, but and it looks at the growth that we foresee within Redmond 2050. And I don't think any of us is quibbling with that. Our problem basically is when Cascade publishes their plan, let's say some details emerge which change the fundamental way we would have to do things. We've already passed this plan, so then the next stop is what, 6 years from now, which is, if we had to tweak anything, we couldn't. Since they haven't published anything, we don't have anything to stand on from there.
I do want to remind everybody, though, that if they do come out with something next year that does change how we need to look at it, we can go through our annual update process. We don't have to wait 6 years. If they're changing something fundamentally, right now, we just need to get this document passed, but if they change things that are going to impact us, then we'll change our document.
All right,
Sorry, can I just do a follow-up on that?
yes.
Thank you. What if we have something in this plan which states that, like from the public's perspective, let's say we've caused enough panic by having this conversation, right? So if we have the assurance that once that plan comes out, that this plan will be looked at just one more time, and that's formalized in this plan, saying that when the new plan comes out, we will revisit to see that it is in sync. Just a paragraph and a commitment officially, then we would say, given these current assumptions and the current knowledge, I think we can have a discussion as a commission. But that it cannot be in the issues matrix. It has to be in the plan itself because it's part of that plan. If the assumptions change, the plan has to change. That is the understanding. So I don't know if that's possible, but that's what I would like to propose.
And one of the things that came out of this week, I'm just going to very quickly, and then it's definitely your turn. One of the things that I think is really important here is we don't control the source from Cascade, but we do control Redmond's reaction to it. So if we're in a situation where we need additional conservation, or we need additional storage, or we need, like, for example, non-potable water used for firefighting, or whatever the needs are to get us across that line so that we have the right number of gallons per minute, like all of the metrics here, then I think the plan just assumes that we will have that water, and maybe there needs to be more contingency planning. Vice Chair Woodyer.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally, this is a subject that I'm really passionate about. You know, we have a responsibility to the members of this community, including the developers, to make sure that we understand and we have confidence that the water source is going to enable us to fulfill our obligations and responsibilities. I think given this, if I understood you correctly, the 7-year delay is due to complacencies around a surplus and negotiations for new water. Did I misunderstand that? New water source negotiations?
Mostly water source negotiations.
Okay. Okay. It still exposes us to risk, and so I would be satisfied if we outline the assumptions and the known risks, so that if they don't come to fruition, if that 7-year delay extends to 12 years, 20 years, whatever, we know that that's something that we need to address so that our source of water is secure. And we don't we don't submit ourselves to surprises that impact the members of this community.
So we are in a contract, an agreement with Cascade. So they have a commitment. We have a commitment to produce a certain amount of water from our wells, and they have a commitment to serve a percentage of water to our community. That doesn't change with any of these conversations. It carries forward. So as our population grows right now, that commitment carries forward to support the burgeoning population.
But if they fall short, then we carry the risk. We carry the burden, rather. I mean, there's agreement, but if the source if they're not able to fulfill that because of these issues, that's a big risk we're taking on.
Yeah, I mean, Cascade is a member agency, so it's basically all of the, it's not just them committing to provide water to Redmond. It's all of the member cities that buy their water from Cascade working together. And so they're making, as a group, as a region, they're making these decisions on what the best path forward is. And it's with the interest of the member cities at the forefront. So, the mayor is our primary representative, and I think Councilmember Villanueva
It's
is our,
Nueva Comida.
is our backup. And so they're heavily involved, as are the member representatives from the other cities. So it's, if there were any kind of shortfall, it would be something that all of the cities would be working to correct, and the contract is written that way. And the reality is that this region has a surplus of water. It's not like other areas like Arizona or, other cities where there just is really not enough water. It's just a matter of developing the contracts and trying to do it in a way that's the most beneficial to the ratepayers.
But is there any reason?
One second. Let's, I just want to make sure everyone gets heard first round. Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess two questions. One is, we currently have a surplus.
Yes.
Will we continue to have a surplus?
For the next 20 years or more, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so my question is, do we have have you done scenario planning? So what I hear here is a number of things around, we should put something in the plan that's around some form of scenario plan. If X happens, then we do Y. Z happens, then we do A or B. Or do we have that in any of the documentation, given the questions we've got here?
So we have, separate from the water system plan, but actually it's an appendix, we have water shortage response plans. Seattle Water has water shortage response plans, and Cascade has a water shortage response plan. And they're all fairly detailed as to how any kind of shortage would be handled. And obviously, providing drinking water is what gets protected. And there are a lot of ways to cut voluntarily or to require curtailments, and it's detailed out in those plans.
So I just want to follow up on that really quickly to explain something, though. So currently, Cascade has what's called a declining block contract, which means that they get a block of water, and it's 33.3 million gallons per day average use, or 63 at peak use, through 2039. But at that point, it starts declining by a set amount each year through 2063, which is well within the range of our comp plan that we're talking about now. So we're dealing with less and less And the issue is, can we have certainty, or at least confidence, certainty is not, but confidence that the contract negotiations with Tacoma will conclude by the end of the year so that we get that 20-year supply to carry things over. And there's still a question, even if we do that, it's going to take time to build the pipeline from Tacoma or to arrange other pipelines for the water to travel through. So there's some cost associated with that probably, but it's kind of like, can we get the pieces, can we have confidence that the pieces are going to line up for that supply to be there when eventually our supply contractually starts declining with Seattle?
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, the mayor and staff have full confidence that that is going to happen, and there's not going to be a water shortage issue, and we'll move forward. They'll have the contract in place. They'll update the plan. It'll include all of our growth numbers, and it will not be an issue. Those water conservation issues are in a separate plan, not in this document. So again, trying to move forward with what the Planning Commission purview for what's on your packet today. We just need to kind of reminder. I understand that
I
it is.
appreciate that, but there have been 2 pushbacks on this plan already. And so that it makes more sense to make that statement that is all future tense earlier on. I understand the contract negotiations with Tacoma have been approved and given go ahead by the board. I know that that was a 2-year process leading up to that. So it's clear that there is momentum underway, but it's also clear that there was some series of problems at some point that has led to kind of a slower progression than necessarily inspires confidence. So I don't want to gloss over commissioners' concerns here. I think they're really important. This is the point of an oversight on the plan, is to say, wait a second, what are we missing? Commissioner Aparna.
I think there are 2 parts to this. We understand that we want to pass the plan, and I think all of us are on the same page that it's consistent with the base assumptions. Now, if there have been issues so far with Cascade Water Lines reaching agreement, alignment, whatever, like what a give take in the negotiations, if something changes and it doesn't go in Redmond's favor, I would like to think that this plan will be nimble enough to shift along. And for me personally, like if I had to kind of vote on this, I would say that I would pass this plan with a small section stating that when Cascade releases its next one, there is an official review, official technical review to see that the 2 plans match up and that the original assumptions still stand. And if that is so, then we say, okay, fine, we did a great job, nothing changed, and yay. But if it isn't, we're not taking such a huge gamble on something so critical. Because the next round would be so much further down, that would keep me in a state where I would say, hey, you know what, we would be consistent because we have added that rider, we'd be consistent with the comp plan saying that there will be water for all. And so many policies talk about it in the elements, so it would be consistent in my mind if we added that. Then we wouldn't hold it up, is what I would say. And as to one more point relating to the scenarios, so for me, a scenario analysis is not just about, hey, if there's water or there's no water. There's gradations in the middle. And the middle is where things go soft. So if our scenario analysis is if there's not enough water, there's a water shortage plan, that's not acceptable. Because scenario analysis for me is, if there's no water from source A, can we get it from source B, C, D? If there is no other option, we go to the water shortage plan. That's how I plan for my work and for everything else. There's contingencies built in, and we are assuming Cascade's doing its work on that. But we don't know for sure.
So I did read their shortage plan. To me, it was quite detailed. So I appreciate the work that's there. Right. The question is just, to me, the question is, how are they dealing with that contract actual decline in water supply that we know is coming and that has been delayed. So I agree actually very strongly with what you're saying about if we could be assured that there's some, like so currently the contract is set to be signed in Q4 2024 with Tacoma. If that deadline is missed, that's a big deal to me. If the supply and transmission plan deadline of March 2025 is missed, that's a big deal to me. And then they have, in the board meeting, they had a slide of additional steps that they want to take in 25 and 26, including hiring the team, creating a demand survey, and then also like a construction budget and plan and all of those details. And that's aggressive, but if they could do that, then by the end of 2026, then I think we're in a much more confident situation.
So then adding to my comment would be that if, let's say, everybody meets their deadlines, we get the contract with Tacoma, and we get the demand plan by March, we review it then, yay, it's all good, great. If it doesn't come in as planned for whatever reason, right? I mean, there's been delays for whatever reason. So let's assume worst case scenario, the same thing happens again and everything gets delayed. We need a cutoff date at which we revisit this plan and these assumptions, saying, hey, it didn't work out as we assumed. What's next? So that's, I think, would give us reassurance. So there's part A, everything goes as planned. We review it once it aligns, awesome.
Would it be acceptable for us to add a statement in the introduction to the plan indicating that the plan relies on the development of the contract with Tacoma, the completion of a TSP that aligns with the assumptions we've included in the plan, and I don't know if we would include a specific date by when we would revisit, but at least make a commitment to reconsider, review the plan, and as needed, revise our approval process. Would that be sufficient?
To me, that would be great, except I really, if they miss that 2025 date with the Department of Ecology, that's a very big deal. So, because that would be the second major delay.
I think that is key also. I know you don't want to commit to a date, but it would be a good idea to have something, like maybe it's second quarter of 25. So we don't miss the boat entirely.
And I just want to jump in. Sorry, Commissioner Copley, I just saw your hand.
We go every 10 years.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
I'll try not to give you any motion sickness here. I'm still now. I want to echo what Aparna has said about a worst case scenario plan. When I was a kid, I saw a movie called An American Tail, Fievel Goes West, where they plug up the water and stop the mice from getting water, and it was one of the most terrifying scenes in a movie I've seen. It was a cartoon, and I've been afraid of water shortages ever since. I think it would be great if we could plan for worst case scenario and put together a plan for this, because this is so critical. And I'm curious, Lisa, if you could just talk about A, what would a worst case scenario look like, and B, what would be the contingency if that ever took place?
I'm not sure we actually know that at this point. Like, that would be the point of having the additional plan.
Right. And
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's an off-the-cuff answer.
It really isn't. I mean, there is a lot of detail provided in the plan, the water shortage plan that's included in the document as an appendix, and it really goes through detail of how we would handle a shortage. But as with any kind of emergency situation, there are going to be a lot of decisions that are made boots on the ground. And so we can go through scenarios.
I have a suggestion if I can add in
Well,
there.
absolutely.
Okay. About this particular comment?
Yeah, and how we can how we can wrap it all into maybe something that we can add. That piece in part, I don't think we can answer right now, but the way to move forward, I think, might be to say, let's add to the introduction to their document that they will review as soon as Cascade comes out, and add into the Planning Commission recommendation that long-range planning as a part of our 5-year review cycle that we do on the comp plan, we include a review of water to make sure that we have the Cascade, and that if there is anything, we recommend an update prior to the 10-year cyclical update to the water plan.
To me, that doesn't work. So we're 8 budget cycles out on the contractual projected shortage based on 2012 numbers. I don't see how waiting an additional 5 years to 12 years out, that just doesn't make sense to me. Vice Chair Woodyear.
I was going to say, what would be, I like the idea of adding that up somewhere in the document that there's a reliance upon these plans, which we don't control.
It's in there. It's already in there, but just not the specifics of the updates.
Right, but what would be the rationale for not revisiting? If they fall short of March 2025 and they have no plan or it's woefully unacceptable, what would be the resistance for revisiting our plan, our ability to do what we're responsible for doing?
I mean,
It's a pushback is what I'm really trying to understand.
we as the city are responsible, you know, the mayor and council and staff are responsible, and that to ensure that we have an adequate water supply. So if, I mean, it's something that's being kept, there are a lot of eyes on it in the city. And to this point, I mean, there's full confidence that in Cascade to provide the water. You know, I was taken into, I spoke with our director, and he said he spoke with the mayor and with council, and we're confident. But if there were something that were to change, we would be all over it, and we would be looking at what needs to happen moving forward as a city. And it wouldn't be just our city, it would be all of the member cities also moving forward to a solution.
The thing that I keep coming back to is the reason that the date 2019 is sort of unfortunate for the slip is that if they'd done all of the fresh surveys and supply and transmission information at that point for that plan, then we would have had it going into this process. But then they missed that and missed a second one. So we're really playing catch up. So I do think that the level of concern that commissioners have is legitimate. And I also just want to reflect that I've heard from many council members over the years that they really see Planning Commission as the group that does the homework. So it is absolutely their judgment and decision and responsibility, but I think they really count on us to, when we see something that's very alarming, to make sure that they get that information. And so I think that's the reason you're hearing so many strong voices tonight, is not that we don't have a lot of trust in Redmond's government or that people are working extremely hard to do the right thing for the community. But this feels a little bit like a case where people want to do the right thing, but the numbers don't quite back that up yet. So I think what we're saying is, can we get to a point where they should be there, and then just really stamp this as like, okay, we're moving forward. Commissioner Coleman.
We have a hand up.
Oh, thank you so much. Whose hands are up? Oh, welcome, Seraphy Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to chime in and share, it's absolutely valid for the Planning Commission members to share their concerns, and that can be included in the report. I do want to back up what Becky was saying around what the decision before the Planning Commission is to recommend or not recommend this section, and you can include in the majority or minority report any of the concerns or issues, but I know that staff have worked really hard, including answering the questions that are before you all today, and that for the staff, they are requesting basically a recommendation or non-recommendation, and we don't have a lot more options to be able to continue to go back and forth with Cascade in that way.
Right. No one's asking to go back and forth with Cascade here. So Can you just clarify, do you mean that we could not add an additional date and review for the city council to come back and see this a second time in March?
I think back to Becky's recommendation, I think you could add into either your report or into the issue matrix or some language that's acceptable to the long range planning team for the actual element or for the water plan itself. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is I think we're getting into a lot of the different details related to this plan that could potentially change. And that the decision tonight, though, that would be needed would be to recommend or not recommend it in addition to whatever amendment you'd like to add.
All right, so I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads here. Commissioner Coleman.
I thought it's asked the same question, Chair, which is, could we add something in that says, can we come back and review this in the document? Because if we don't, what I'm hearing from everybody here is that we'd be a non-recommendation at this point because of that. Is that fair? I'm sort of asking everybody.
That's
here.
what I'm seeing from shaking heads.
Just to clarify, though, what we would add is the introduction to the plan is the reliance on Cascade Water, and then as soon as they release the new information, that they'll review it. And then what we can add in the Planning Commission's recommendations to council is that there is some kind of an end date. And then we could forward it if you can have a recommendation in there for the council to consider a date of 2 years or 5 years, whatever you choose to do. But if you put that in your recommendations to council, that would be the way you could move forward.
Does that have any weight behind, like, if we write in our recommendation, we would like to see them review it in March, in 9 months, does that bear any consequence on their actual schedule?
Well, there's a number of things that go in there. Council's the ultimate decision maker. So if they put a different date for review in there, that's their decision.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah, but also if, Cascade gets it out maybe in July, if we have a hard date of March, would that make sense? So I think at this point, we just need to figure out what we can put in the Planning Commission recommendations to get it to council, because that is the Planning Commission's role. At this point, the Planning Commission cannot dictate to staff their work plan, if that makes sense.
That does. Thank you. That's clarifying. Commissioner Van Nymen.
I'm fine with that. And I think what I kind of hear is from certain commissioners' perspective, there's this risk. And then what staff is saying is, we agree with you, there's a risk, and we also think it's very small. So, or even very, very small is kind of what I'm hearing. So, if we add some of this language in that makes everybody happy, I think we could move on. I mean, I don't discount the concerns that have been raised. I also look over here where you guys are like, you're looking at us going like, yeah, you guys, this is a very, very small risk that you're focused on.
Commissioner Aparna.
I understand where you're coming from, and personally, if I could have something officially, I know Planning Commission can write their recommendations and we can put in whatever we think best right now. But I personally am not comfortable voting for, and I will be upfront with the rest of the commission, if I don't feel that this will be revisited and it is written within your document, not our recommendations, not in the issue matrix, that this is going to be revisited. So my thing is like this. If the risk is so small, that's the best case scenario we can think of. The best case scenario is nothing changes in this plan. And we are home free, no extra work for anybody. We're all good. And frankly, I would love to have that scenario. But I am afraid. I come from a place where there are water wars. There have been people lit on fire because there's not enough water. Now, you might say, oh, we are such a far cry from that. But you cannot pivot on water in 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. It takes time. You know that. So I would prefer to think that we've done our due diligence and say, when the new plan comes out, there is a review, that the assumptions and the risks that we have stated, it remains the same, and we will pivot if something in that changes. That's the language we are looking for in your report. And at least that's what I would like to do, because I think the plan works great apart from that.
Commissioner Coleman.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to kind of add to that, because I think if the risk is small and we put it in, then it seems reasonable to me, because ultimately it's going to be, if your position is that it's a very small risk, that something could be a problem, then why don't we just put it in, and it's almost like a pass-through. But if there is a challenge, we have a breaker in there, as you'd have to do with an electricity system, that says, hang on a second, we actually need to look at this because we don't think what they've come back with is correct. So I don't see there's a downside if that was the case. Just trying to build on what you're saying. So what's the downside?
The one thing that I would ask the commission to be mindful of is that this document, in addition to being adopted by City Council, has to go to DOH and then has to go to King County Council for approval. And that's an extensive process too. And so I think some of the hesitation, at least from my end, is the prospect of delaying that process any further. We are actually, with our own water system plan, in an extension right now. And we don't want to fall further behind either. And so I want to, I'm hopeful that we can continue to make progress in our process, in the city's review and approval process, so that we can move it forward to the state and then to King County for approval.
I really respect that. And I also think that the concerns here are still valid. This is a really hard question, because I think I agree with everyone who's saying the sunny scenario. And all the non-sunny scenarios covered by this report are great. The question to me is, again, going back to the very beginning, the premise that Cascade is capable of delivering the water at the end of the comp plan timeframe, but that's still within that 20-year planning for water window. Commissioner Aparna.
So if this language could be added technically by the next meeting, I'm just hypothetically talking here, if we could get like a couple of paragraphs, we're not looking for a whole thing, just a commitment that this will be revisited. It cannot be done in 2 weeks.
I think what Seraphy said earlier and that Becky reiterated is that we can't control that schedule. So we can't get a confirmation that would actually be revisited, was what I heard.
No, but she said that the long-range team could decide that.
But we don't get to.
So are you okay if I jump in?
Yes, please, thank you.
I think what we're saying is you could include, so the decision before you tonight is to recommend or not recommend, right? And you can include in your report what language you would like the council to consider. And so going back to what Becky said, the Planning Commission does not have the authority to direct staff to do kind of further work as you're recommending, Commissioner Aparna here, but you can include that in your recommendation or non-recommendation of the plan itself.
Thank you, that's super helpful.
Can I ask then,
Yes,
if we do a
Commissioner Coleman.
non-recommendation and we provide some language, what's the next step there? Well, what I'm hearing, what I'm hearing is we either recommend or don't. If we don't recommend because we want some language to be put into the document itself, what's the next step if we don't recommend it and put that in? That's what I'm trying to understand. What's the delay in timing? Because that seems a big challenge for you.
Yeah, if the Planning Commission doesn't recommend approval, it would still go to council. It would just be recommended as a not approval. However, what staff had said is we could add that language to the introduction to the plan. And you can add additional recommendations into the staff recommendation to council. So we can document all of this. It's just we need to decide where we want to document it so that we can get it into a recommendation to council. But your recommendation to council could also be we don't recommend it. But either way, we just need to get a motion from the Planning Commission. But we can put yes, we're going to revisit it because we understand things are in flux in the introduction to the plan. And we can have that for you for your staff report at the next meeting for your approval.
And just to clarify, this is always true for anything that goes to council in our packet, but any commissioner is welcome to write a letter or a brief to council explaining their thought or expounding on a point or explaining your thought process. Again, people have really looked into this issue. They're weighing their consciences. That information can all get summarized and added to the packet. So, for example, this is a topic where I plan to write an additional brief to include in the packet for council because I think it's important regardless of which way we end up voting. Commissioner Aparna.
I had a procedural question.
Yes.
What if two commissioners join together to write one of those? Is that allowed?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't think we can do more than 4 because, again, that's quorum. So
Okay, yeah, no,
does that make sense? Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah, if it's something that is a part of the motion, we recommend approval with the following recommendations as discussed today, and there's a couple more, right? We've gone through the issues matrix and identified several bullet points of recommendations. Your motion would just be, we recommend approval with the recommendations as discussed by Planning Commission. And then we could also include in that motion and with the edit made to the introduction to expand on a revisiting.
Commissioner Aparna.
Again, procedural question. If we decide to vote on it today, let's say we recommend, but we don't recommend the text or we see it, would that be okay? Because
You don't recommend the text. No, you either have to accept it as it is now in the plan or not. The packet can have an introduction that includes extra information, but the plan itself wouldn't change, correct?
No, what we said is we can add an introduction to the plan that includes that statement in the plan itself, not necessarily just in the Planning Commission's report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that Seraphy said the opposite.
With the introduction to the plan, we can add a paragraph.
Vice Chair Whittier.
Sorry,
So if I'm understanding this,
1 second. Let's just get the clarification on that from Seraphy.
yep, thank you. No, yeah, as Becky said, what I was saying is, what I heard Commissioner Aparna asking for was to change the actual plan itself. And that would be, versus adding language into the introduction.
Thank
So
you.
also the other thing I'd raise my hand is that if you all, there's a lot of passion here, and in the past we've had the chair come to the council meetings to represent the discussion, particularly if the Planning Commission is concerned that the concerns are not going to be heard other than being written into the report or into the introduction, whatever gets voted on. So I just want to offer that as well, that if you all would like to work with staff to have the chair come and represent the discussion that council has, again, whether it's recommended or not recommended or what the language is, that could be an option as well.
I very much appreciate that. Thank you for offering.
So could we add the language that we will, if there are any changes in cascades in the projections, can we add that into the introduction? And then if you have a timeline, a specific timeline that you want to have visited, can you do that as a recommendation? And the only reason I say that is any kind of change that we make, we have to send it through multiple reviewers. And so there's a lot of process involved on our end. And so, we're committed to making sure that if there are changes in the supply situation, that we would revisit it.
Yeah.
And we could include that language.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that? So I really, I appreciate the offer for when the plan gets approved. But to me, if the plan slipped again, so if the Tacoma negotiation doesn't go through and then the March deadline is missed, I'm very concerned about that. That's actually my biggest concern here. And so it's not, I don't want it hooked to when the plan is, it's kind of either way in March. I would like this either when the transmission and supply plan is filed or if it is not, if it is extended.
Can we do that as a recommendation as a planning commission recommendation?
If you do want that to be in, I would recommend that you put it in your motion as one of your recommendations to council.
Okay. And let's take one super quick step backwards. I have not heard a single word about the wastewater plan tonight. Does anyone have any final comments about that, or are we feeling good? Lovely, thank you, just checking. Okay, so I think I'm going to look for a motion to approve, hold on just a second. Oh, we should,
Yes.
pardon me. I got ahead of myself, thank you.
worries.
All right, can we formalize language, or do we have to do it in the motion to wrap up that particular piece?
I thought we had to formalize the
The
language.
exact language, the topic, you can note, but the exact wording, we can tweak in between.
Thank you.
But if you change the whole subject when we do that, then of course, that would negate it all, so.
Okay, I'll try to make that work.
That makes sense. Maybe
In what
Becky
that helps, thank you.
While you're working through the rest of the issues matrix, I can type out some proposed language and we can discuss it with the others, but we would like to get, I mean, you can edit your PC report. So if the proposed language that we do in the PC report, you want to massage the language of the recommendation, that's fine. But we want to know exactly what recommendation you want to include in your report.
So just to clarify, so I'm going to look for a motion eventually, not at this moment, to recommend approval to the City Council of the general wastewater plan, but also the water system plan with the caveat that we have additional recommendations to include in the introduction of the water system plan. Is that correct? More or less? It's okay. Okay, so eventually, we know about the wastewater plan, and the water system plan will be looking for a motion to recommend approval to City Council with the caveat that we have additional recommendations to be included in the introduction.
Yeah, so in the draft kind of motion that we wrote up, it's just you would recommend approval of the general wastewater plan and the water system plan with recommendations as discussed tonight.
Okay,
And change language in the official introduction in the plan.
Correct.
correct.
So you would just add that to the motion and with the edit to add additional language to the introduction.
Great.
That seems reasonable to me.
I own the ball.
When do we decide?
And then when do we decide on that additional language? Is that tonight? Is that next week?
It would summarize, I think we can talk about that in the discussion of the motion.
Yeah.
Exactly which language we want.
And just,
Is that tonight or is that in?
That would be now, yeah.
and just.
Well, once we're done the issues matrix.
Right. And unfortunately, I won't be at the next meeting because I will be on vacation that's been planned for over a year. So
Yes.
if anything we can wrap up tonight,
Yeah,
Would be
no, I
great.
think we're on our way.
All right.
So let's keep working. We have 2 more items on the issues matrix that I think are the less contentious ones.
Okay, so item 12 was protecting the critical aquifer recharge area. And I had added language following our last meeting on that.
We can close this. I have a request, please. Can you please close this with a recommendation to council to fund more frequent and expanded monitoring of water quality? And also, in the closed issues of 14, 17, 19, and 20, these are closed, where there were options to add this as recommendations in the PC report. Could you please add all those comments in? So that's 14, 17, 19, and 20, and then 12 here.
To the introduction comment?
No,
No.
this is
Just a
the
comment.
PC recommendations,
Oh.
our thing outside, because that's not
All right.
Thank you.
germane to the water plan.
Yep,
And,
thank you.
and I think actually Ann had forwarded earlier today starting language to try to capture that. So if we can work through that language on those items that we had flagged, and I think it would be all the ones you mentioned plus 12. So,
Thank you.
Great.
And Susan, the document, sorry, Chair Weston, the document that Becky and I prepared, those bullet points are
At the bottom?
are on there. Okay, just.
Lovely.
yeah,
Thank
just to
you.
help start that conversation.
you.
Yep.
When we get to that point of the motion, I'll put the language up on the
Right.
screen.
okay. All right. So then the last one was 16. Let's zoom on down. did I just do? Okay, and that's again planned to address the water, this was the water storage shortfall, and we added additional explanation on that, so I didn't receive any follow-up questions.
Commissioner.
I think the key thing to really understand is that we're very conservative in our storage assumptions in that we require twice the volume that Department of Health sets as their minimum. So if we were to go by Department of Health numbers, we would have no storage shortfall whatsoever. But we choose to be more conservative. And so.
And to clarify, that's for firefighting or additional on top of that?
Well, it's the volume for firefighting. So the standard is 200 gallons per dwelling unit, and we choose to go with 400 gallons per dwelling unit.
Thank you. Commissioner Aparna.
I think it's three of us who've asked the question, but I had a follow-up question on this, probably a very quick response. I understand that the storage is needed at some point, and it's going to be $24 million. Does this mean this project will be earmarked in the next water plan? Because
No, it's actually,
budget.
has been added in the, in our, beyond the 6-year CIP.
Okay.
It would be about a 3-year project to get it start to finish.
But it's on the work plan already, like technically.
It is because it's recommended in the water system plan.
Okay.
And so that establishes all the capital projects that are needed.
Thank you.
Would we adjust the display to go back to item
sorry.
16?
16, yes.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Aparna, was that?
I can see it being closed, but I defer to
All right,
the
so then Commissioners Woodyear, or sorry, Vice Chair Woodyear and Commissioner Van Nyman can close. All right, that one looks good then. All right, everyone. So in that case, I look for a motion to ask staff to recommend approval to City Council of the Water System Plan and General Wastewater Plan for Redmond 2050, and add additional language to the introduction of the water system plan to capture the discussion tonight, specifically about the concern about the Cascade Water Alliance's new supply and transmission plan that should arrive in March 2025. And then also with proposed additional recommendations for the water system plan that include specific additional information about water supply projection, performance scorecards, et cetera, and future annual water quality reports. A recommendation that the city conduct additional analysis of top water users to support focused water conservation efforts. That the city explore additional uses of reclaimed water outside of the CARA as part of the Climate Action Plan. And a recommendation that future study undertaken by the city explore variable water utility rate structures, especially if available, to advance water conservation efforts.
And then up on your screen, all of those that she just read out are in there, and then I've added the first bullet here based on our conversations today. If you'd like to revisit that, I just threw in 2026. You guys tell me what you want it to read.
I agree with that. Yes, thank you for capturing that.
There's one missing, the one I just mentioned today, which was number 12, which is, I can read it out if you want. Recommendation to council to fund more frequent and expanded monitoring of water quality in city wells specifically.
Thank you. So I look for a motion to cover that entire recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or further discussion? Read out Becky's language on the statement. Oh, so the addition here would be Planning Commission recommends that the city revisit the water systems plan when the Cascade Water Alliance plan is updated in 2025 and update our plan if needed, I believe. If the Cascade Water Alliance plan is additionally delayed, the Planning Commission recommends additional review of the water system plan occur in 2026 to review. I would actually make this stronger. Instead of review if additional conservation measures would be needed, I would say to review the additional conservation and storage measures that will be needed.
Can I just ask one?
Not necessarily supply because of the way that the contract is structured with Cascade. That's a much larger conversation. I think it's more complex than that. So I would personally start with storage and conservation, and I think that the reliance on Cascade is still well placed. It's just at that point, Redmond, I think, needs more personal accountability for their own risk.
I think it's a little on the weaker side, because I would say that if worst case scenario, nobody's delivering water to us, then conservation is not going to cut it. Storage, we don't have water to store. Storage is not going to help us if there is no supply. So it's a larger conversation at that point. So I think maybe we need to rephrase it, but I don't know.
So my personal take is actually that storage can help significantly, and I think we've seen that in surrounding cities. So for example, Kirkland just had a huge project to build a new reservoir under a park. Mercer Island is dealing with a situation this week in which their storage facilities may not have actually been adequate. So I think that storage is a big portion of this conversation in addition to conservation if we reach the point where we need it, which hopefully we don't.
I'm not saying storage isn't important. I'm saying that if the CWA deals with supply, so if there is something wrong with that delivery, storage is only the end part of it. So we do need to address supply, and I think how it's phrased here is better. To review the additional measures that the city would need is, I think, better, because it covers the whole umbrella of whatever we would need to do at that point.
I know, I'm just saying that if we were looking at additional supply, then we'd have to go outside Cascade, and that's a much larger conversation that I think the council would get to.
Leave it broad.
It's outside of our purview.
No, I'm saying leave it broad right now, because we don't know what we don't know.
It doesn't work. It's outside of.
No, I'm saying to ensure, so I think this works because, as Becky phrased it just now on the screen, I think this works because it's taking care.
No, I really want specifically listed conservation and storage. Supply is a separate issue that is managed by Cascade.
I see CWA dealing with supply.
Yes.
So if CWA does not fulfill its demand forecast for whatever reason, storage we are building the storage. We can also, I'm not saying that those are not important, but what the CWA plan does is talk about supply.
But
If they don't
I'm-
have those details.
I'm sorry, I don't think that we should be recommending a route that would require us to break with Cascade.
I'm saying that.
Commissioner, sorry, just a second. I heard you.
So we still
Vice Chair Woodyer.
we still have the option, if members of this commission disagrees with the exact wording, we still
Yes.
have the option to send separate
Yes.
report or separate comments. So perhaps we consider that route.
Yes, absolutely.
And I want to propose an edit here that I've made as I'm listening to your conversations. Review any additional measures that the city would need to take, including but not limited to conservation and storage measures might address, it covers everything on both sides.
Yep.
I think this is good. This works for me. Thank you.
All right.
Chair,
Yes,
a
Commissioner
really,
Coleman.
really tiny comment. really super tiny, which is when we put in 2026, I read that as by 31st December 2026 at the latest, because that's the last day of 20. Is there a date in 2026, or is it by any date in 2026?
So I recommend in 2026 and leave it general. There, Cascade is on a 2-year plan that goes through 25 and 26. I'm okay with that. Sorry, Vice Chair Woodyer? No. Yes?
I think 2026 is fine because it gives you some wiggle room, additional wiggle room.
Yeah.
So if March slips to November or January 1, 2026, I think that gives us some wiggle room.
Yep. Do you disagree?
Like end of 2026. I'm just being. It's not. I'm trying to be particular, but like end of. Well, that's what we're saying. Well, it could be the end of 2026. Can we just put 2026 up there? That's all. Can we just? It's just a tiny point. Like just put some other language.
Specificity in all things. That's great.
So you're recommending a change to this to say instead of in 2026, you say by the end of?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
Same thing, but it's more particular.
It is very specific, yes.
Sorry.
thank you.
All right, commissioners, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Right, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized I did not close the written portion of the public hearing for water. Can I do that now?
Go ahead and close it.
All right, I would like to also close the written portion of the public hearing.
Can we also confirm that Brian voted?
I abstained. I haven't had enough time to look through this, and I don't feel confident that this is exactly what we want to say to council.
Thank you.
Just it's being written as we're talking, so I'm abstaining.
Reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right, thank you so much for your time and all the hard work and for working with us in this process, because I think we're all here with the same goals. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I think we have the omnibus package coming up next, but I think maybe a 5-minute break. Okay, do people need 10? Yes, okay, so we'll resume at 8:20. Would like to invite Becky Fry for the study session on the summer 2024 omnibus wrap-up package for Redmond 2050.
Okay, commissioners, this summer omnibus package or the wrap-up package is the last set of the comprehensive plan amendments proposed. So this is the last bit of the actual chapters of the comprehensive plan. It's very exciting to get to this piece. It's also the last look at the code and functional plan updates that go with that 2024 package. What we have tonight represents loose ends, some minor error corrections. It addresses the requests that have been brought up over the last little bit. It also reflects, we had done some additional testing of the overlay code, and so there's a few adjustments in there based on some last minute conversations with stakeholders. But in general, this is what is trying to tie it all together into one big, huge package. And so thank you so much for all your work over the last several years to get us to this point. What I'm going to do today is I have a PowerPoint. It was in your packet. I noticed at like 5 o'clock this afternoon. It's a little out of date. So what I want to do is I'll start with that, and then I'm just going to go over to the technical report because the tech memo is current. So let me go ahead and share the PowerPoint. Okay. All right. So tonight we are hoping to just do a run through of everything that's included in the omnibus package. We want to do this in a comprehensive way because we have your public hearing at your next meeting, and we hope to get the Planning Commission recommendation on the 31st if we can wrap it all up. So we're going to go through and go each individually, line by line, not necessarily open up every document, but we're going to go through the tech report, and it lists out what the changes are and why they were made. And then we will start the issues matrix so that we can go into that. Again, we're all hoping that we don't have any Planning Commission meetings in August, so if we can get it wrapped up on the 31st, that would be great. This package is a consolidation of a bunch of things. Like I said, there's lots of pieces and parts, but the approach is for this entire package is to tie it all together. We do have a number of pieces and parts, and this is where I'm going to actually just stop sharing on this document and switch over to the technical report, which is in the packet. Okay. It consists of comprehensive plan element changes and code changes. So they're listed out in the technical report in groupings. The forward is included for your knowledge that it's being developed. Jan Harrison, our DEI manager, helped draft that. That is going to continue being drafted, and council's going to, and mayor's going to help continue the forward. We're also going to be adding in a letter from the mayor. That will not come back to the Planning Commission. It's just a piece and part that the mayor and council develop and as a part of the introduction to the comprehensive plan. The actual intro, though, is where everything will come through. The introduction has been revised. Mostly because it all referenced 2030, and now we're just updating to reflect the new pieces and parts and where we are with today's plan. The goals framework and vision is it's brand new again because we're pulling forward all the framework and all of the Redmond 2050 stuff. But it's not necessarily new because it's taking stuff from all of the chapters and just creating a summary version of what's in each chapter as that chapter of goals, vision, and framework. So there are a couple of edits, though, that happen within each element, and they're listed out here. Some of them are just updating maps. So some of these are you're not even going to notice what the change is, but we just approved an annexation this year, so the maps needed to get updated to incorporate that. There have been some slight adjustments to the boundaries as Audra Cardenas, our GIS guru, has been just cleaning up so we're just updating some of the maps. So all of those are relatively minor. There's a couple of tiny little changes in response to Kent County, to WashDOT, the Snoqualmie tribes. They're scattered in a couple of different elements. They're listed out here. I'm not going to go through each one, but they're fairly minor. Like WashDOT just wanted to add some background text about the trail connection to East Lake Smash Trail. And so we're just adding in and just clarifying some things in response to those. In the economic vitality, there's a couple of things in there that were added because of council review. So they asked us to add back in smart city language and childcare policy, so that's in the packet. Capital facilities, added in that capital facilities plan, which was always intended to be a part of the comp plan, but as we go through and we've done all the modeling now and figured out which projects need to be done, it just needed to be listed out. The community development design, we've added in creative districts as a placemaking tool specifically. We're looking at potentially having a creative district in Marymore, so we wanted to call that out, and that is a state designation. There are definitely some moving things around. We've talked about before taking Overlake and making them centers-wide, so that has happened. There's also just a couple of minor edits because there's some duplicative text in there. So all of these are relatively minor or pieces and parts that you have already discussed and knew were coming in this draft. Natural environment, a couple of minor edits, again, Snoqualmie tribe trees and background and vision. There's some cleanup and the duplication. And it lists out here renumbered policies, but almost every chapter has renumbered policies because we ended up moving things around a little bit. Climate resilience and sustainability, there's a couple of edits based on Planning Commission discussion previously. So CR1 and CR45 are reflecting of your previous conversations. And I mentioned the trail connection that was referenced. Again, it's just background text. And then, again, our DEI manager went through and reviewed a number of different chapters for us and just helped us refine our language and made sure that we were consistent about equity and inclusion language across the plan. We've also did our final review of duplication. Again, some of these chapters, like the community development design chapter, was developed in chunks. And so we had to do a full-on review of duplication. So that has all happened. And then the glossary, again, we just had to make sure it was up to date. The other thing that we did with the glossary is if this definition is in the zoning code, we didn't need the definition in the plan, so we shrunk it down a little bit. Just again, trying to condense and streamline things. So those are all the changes in the comp plan elements. Are there any conversations?
So before we start, actually, I just wanted to reiterate that we are bringing forward the Phase 3 consolidation and streamlining issues matrix.
Correct. So the land use, open space, and landscaping issues matrix is becoming the omnibus package, and I'll have that up here in a minute.
Okay.
So as we start to add issues, you'll see that those existing issues because there are some still open.
Right. So, like, I was tracking, for example, the farmers market in town center. There was a question about prefabricated homes for affordability and climate resiliency. There was a rationale for locating play equipment 10 feet from property lines. Like, there were a couple of things that were still open that I was tracking, and I'm sure that there are others that other commissioners are tracking. So I just wanted to make sure those were getting rolled in to the same discussion.
Yes, they will.
Amazing.
And I have it right in front of me, and you'll see when I pop it up on the screen that they're there. We didn't respond to it in this because the packet of the omnibus was big enough.
Yeah.
But we're going to add all of the items from the issues matrix stay to this exact same document. There will not be a separate document. It'll just be all one issues matrix moving forward.
Great. So starting the discussion from that point, Commissioner Aparna.
I just want to compliment staff on this fabulous document. I actually read the whole thing end to end, and it's fantastic to see all the different components that we've seen through, and I just want to congratulate the whole team on it. It's looking good, really. I actually had a few questions on the glossary stuff. So I'm just wondering if we want to do that.
So what I think we should do is, why don't we commissioners do their most important one question, and we'll go around, and then we'll kind of just keep going down your priority list, and anything that doesn't make our time today, then we can send by email.
And if it is something just like in the actual definition language, feel free to just email that.
Okay.
That's great.
That was actually my question, was procedural, that can I just send an email across? I have what I need to say. Yeah,
Great.
really good stuff, very thrilling. Thank you.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Van Nymen.
So Chair Nichols is gone, so she doesn't have to watch the smart city language come back. And I'm not necessarily going to open that whole can of worms unless there are new commissioners who wanted to have that conversation, and they don't even know what we're talking about, but we've spent a lot of time on that. But clearly, the council wants that language in there. So, but the one part of that sentence was, and I don't know if you could go to it, it was like, it's economic vitality, it was on,
EV12, it's on page 184. I have it listed.
and the part at the end that I didn't quite understand was, and encourage other service providers to do the same?
same,
I don't even know what that means.
We're just bringing up the document. One moment.
Implement and promote smart city technological initiatives that enhance the city's economic vitality while ensuring data privacy and security. Encourage other service providers to do the same. I'm assuming encourage service providers to use technological initiatives.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not clear to me what that even means. Like, I work for AT&T, are we a service provider? Like, I mean, you know, everybody has their own definition of who provides what service. Like, other cities, Microsoft, what are we talking about?
It's a really good question.
I'm sorry, what was the number again?
EV12, page 184 on the document.
Okay, there we go.
I could say, we could probably add that to the issues matrix to provide a more detailed response.
Great.
But other service providers is generally what you had said, just other service providers.
I didn't say anything. I said I don't know what it means.
But you gave an example of AT&T. That's a service provider. That's anybody that provides services.
So utilities? I mean,
Yes, anybody that
technological
provides services.
companies, so,
Like performers at Derby Days?
I mean.
Could be.
What do we?
So we'll look at at the text. I know it's also related to how the policy was originally written in the current comp plan, so.
Okay.
Yeah. We could go back to the council direction to staff and review the meeting video if needed to respond.
Can I also ask on that one, there was something that's come up since we last since we last discussed this, just around grants, where grants, it's not necessarily clear if they have to comply with the city's data privacy and security plans. So just being very specific that if other companies are running programs within the city, that they're also required to follow these same rules. No, I was actually thinking there were security grants around cameras. And so making sure but Redmond does not own that data. It stayed with the company that's providing the cameras. So, but it was a benefit to the city in that it was free cameras, but there's a question of how well that conforms. And to me, this is when that wasn't in here, like bringing it back, I just want to make sure we're bringing it back with a very broad sense of all the different versions of a smart city in Redmond, not necessarily just the ones run by the city, but also the ones given to the city.
Okay.
Other comments?
I've got my hand raised. I don't know if you can see me.
No, I can't. Thank you. Commissioner Copley.
No problem. EV12 references while ensuring data privacy and security. I think one instructive case study here could be Quayside, which was a smart city that Google was going to build for the city of Toronto, which was shut down because of data privacy and security concerns primarily. There were other issues too, but that was the big rub. So I think that would be worth taking a look at if people aren't familiar with that case study.
Thank you. I'd like to add one in. So I had, and I'm sorry, this is going back to the land use map, which I know we have already approved. However, with the new map and also the list of changes parcel by parcel, I had a question that emerged. So there's a small parcel in Rose Hill, and I can give you the number if you need it, but you'll see it when you look at the map, that's marked as semi-rural instead of the normal residential section that is the rest of Rose Hill. Previously, it's actually half of the parcel is marked semi-rural and the rest is not. And I believe it was miscategorized in the change table because it was listed as part of the annexation, but it's not. It was already part of Redmond. It backs to a sports club, which I'm assuming is part of the reason that it's listed as semi-rural so that the land use tables make sense. But I would love way more information about parcel 032505905 and why it is marked semi-rural in such a crowded area. Other commissioners? Commissioner Coleman.
I have a question first on the forward. What's the purpose of the forward and what's our perspective on the forward? Are we able to have a perspective on the forward?
Yes, you can. That is still in draft mode. That initial draft, again, came from our DEI. There's some additional staff edits that are happening to that. The main purpose of the forward is to share right up front why this document is important and why you should read it and how it relates to you. And so that's what we're going to be folding in. We're going to be talking about, adding in there, hey, this is only every 10 years we update this document, right? And then, so it's reflecting your vision and from 20-25 years conversation with the community. So we're setting the context for why it's important. So if you have some conversations that you would like to see occur in that forward, you could just email that to me. And as we continue to edit that, we can fold in your desires to what to see in that.
Commissioner Coleman.
Yeah, so just send email through to you and the rest of the commission, I'm assuming.
If you can send it to Glenn and Ian, who is now going to be taking over, then they will send it to the rest of the commission, and that way we avoid problems.
With you. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Commissioners. All right, I'll jump in with another one. So I had a comment about the Catalyst project incentives on page 138. Actually, more of a question. So I'm curious what the City Hall Outpost Agreement is, and I'm hoping that it is the follow-up on the plan to cash emergency supplies. But if not, then I'd like to know if that could also be added.
I think I might be able to answer that. Well, we said what was that?
So it's on page 138. There was the Catalyst project incentives for Overlake. And there's a new thing called City Hall Outpost Agreement that looks like it was added since we saw it in terms of a minimum square foot or a maximum square foot.
Oh, okay, that's in the code updates, not in the comp
Yes.
plan. Okay. Let's make a note of that, and Ken, if you wouldn't mind, if for the sake of getting into the issues matrix, if we could just review all the elements first.
Oh, sure.
If you don't mind, that just helps me organize how I'm typing things into this document.
Totally. I'll
But
come back to
We can come
that.
back to that for sure, because I can provide some feedback on that and some input on how we got to where we want to be.
Amazing.
Where we are with that today.
Okay, we'll come back. Commissioner Aparna.
I see that the corridor policy still remains like a single little thing. I'm assuming that after the neighborhood plan, will it be revisited, or is it broad enough that it will feed into the neighborhood plan policies?
So after Redmond 2050 is completed, we have identified a number of different other plan updates that will happen. So we are going to be doing neighborhood plan updates and corridor planning. So what we did here is just set the placeholder for where that will live and setting the permission to do that planning work. So we're not going in and creating a lot of corridor policies today. We're just making sure that people are aware of the fact that we're going to be doing corridor planning for the first time. And like Southeast Redmond is one of the first identified corridors. Avondale's going to need a corridor plan at some point. Southeast Redmond is, as a neighborhood plan, was also really highly identified as maybe one of the first neighborhood plan updates that happen. So all of that will happen once we get through all the Redmond 2050 work. We just needed a home for it in the actual plan.
I figured, but I thought the poor little thing was sitting alone, so.
Yes, yeah. And it is weird, and because the neighborhood plan section looks like the current plan on purpose so that people visually see. We didn't update that except for a couple of minor edits, right? So yes, the old policies still exist in the neighborhood plan and we recognize that, but for the scope of Redmond 2050, we couldn't update every single neighborhood plan.
All right, additional questions about the elements? No. All right, so I think we're ready to move on to zoning now.
Okay, let me go ahead and open up the technical report section on the code updates. It's a little bit more extensive and a little bit more detailed. So in 2104, you've reviewed a lot of 2104. The biggest change for the omnibus version is, like I mentioned at our last meeting, that we're putting placeholders in as we start to move the special regulations over. So the draft in the omnibus package reflects that. And then there's one other minor change where we moved something in the table to a different row, right? So all the stuff that we've discussed over the last couple of weeks, it just went into your omnibus packages, actually the version that got updated. So in 2108, there's a number of minor updates. There's a code reference. We're removing some language on the FAR bonus for affordable housing units because that's already being replaced by something else. And we're repealing overlays within the neighborhoods because they're not needed because we've got all these new housing provisions. So it's all cleanup related edits for the most part. We also have lots of codes here that reference parking regulations. Again, you knew at some point we were going to see the strike-throughs. This is all the strike-throughs of removing it so that it all lives in just one chapter. So 2112, there are some new things. Some of them are really minor. We're deleting some things that we don't need anymore and catching some things that were duplicative and getting rid of them. But some of these things are changes that are part of the negotiation and review process that continued with the community, and including Microsoft, is where they're looking to take a look at how this will impact the technical language, right, and how it would go through. So there's a couple of things that we've done in here. We have, as part of our please don't underdevelop this area because we have to meet our growth requirements, that 70% FAR requirement, which just is, at some point, you can't underdevelop it, and so we have a threshold of what we would like to see, but if you cannot meet it today, please show us in your plans how you're phasing it so that you could at some point meet that 70% threshold. It's not requiring towers, it's not requiring anything more than what is on the ground today that you'll see in Overlake Village. But some of those parcels are really large, and so there was some concern about that, and so what we did is we've added in there an exemption for open space. If you have an approved site plan that dedicates open space, the FAR for the 70% does not include the open space, so that it reduces the amount of square footage that would be required to meet the 70% threshold, if that makes sense. And then at the request of Microsoft that we've added in there, if you have a development agreement that basically says the same thing and gets to the same point, then you don't necessarily have to do that review procedures, that the development agreement can satisfy that.
May I ask a clarifying question on that? Are those changes, are they Do they have the same requirements about timeouts and expiring?
Yes,
As normal ones
so,
would.
yeah, and the current development agreements for the Microsoft properties in particular expire here in a couple of years. So it would be that, it's just that if they go through the updates to the development agreement process and they get to all of the same endpoints through that process, they don't have to go through this process also.
Fantastic. Thank you for the.
Okay. A couple of other things in here too. We are not doing land uses in the individual zones anymore. That was a decision that happened after we went through and approved overlay. So there's just now been replaced with a reference back to 2104. We've had some additional conversations with the community about that transition to new zone, the new standards and the types of permits and whatnot. So the language in that transition has been updated. And so it's just been clarified so that it makes it a little bit better to understand. And that included removing a reference to type 5 permits. And so there's just some edits in there that happen to go along with that. In line with that, not in this package, but what you will see next week is that our planning director has requested Kim Dietz to come back and do an amendment to her regulatory package that adds some additional language about that. If you're caught in the middle, what happens? And so you're going to see a request to have a really quick, minor public hearing to add a 1 or 2 page addendum to an approved planning commission recommendation for the legislative package at your next meeting, not in this package.
Commissioner Aparna,
Does that mean it's something like
could you please speak into the microphone?
sorry, does that mean it's like a bridge set, or is just dates that we are talking about?
In the transition for Overlake, it actually sets some date requirements. It says you have to make this requirement and make this decision, and you have to complete the process by a certain time. What Kim's bringing forward to you, you'll see in your next packet is actually some changes to 2176 that actually just talks about when you qualify for what code. So it's just trying to make sure everybody understands how you would fall under the current code or how you would fall under the new code. And so there's just some additional language to clarify that, because we've had a lot of questions about that for the last couple of months. And so she's just bringing a quick clarification that she'll add into the legislative package. And it's just a really quick amendment to an already approved Planning Commission report. So you'll see that in your next packet. I just wanted to mention it because it goes hand in hand with this, but it is a separate package. Okay. A couple of other things too. We've updated the Overlake Village street map. Just there were a lot of questions about the color being and colorblind friendly, and so they've just removed the color and just kind of updated that a little bit. We also added some language in the incentive program. There's some public art language that we had adopted in Marymore that we wanted to be consistent, so we threw it into Overlake as well. And we've added some clarification on the adult changing station based on some feedback that we got, just to make sure it's very clear. And then our Public Works asked us to add back in the map and the language about the regional stormwater management facilities specifically, because that was in the old incentive program, and so it was hidden in one of the notes underneath. And so it had just gotten struck, and so they wanted to make sure that that map just came back. And then we had an overlay, again, like the neighborhood overlays, just need to get cleaned up, so. The rest of these updates are, again, pretty straightforward. We're updating to make sure we're using middle housing terminology. There's a couple of affordable housing and a number of other things in there. In line with the public art language, we also had to make sure that 2122 also referenced back to Overlake so that the provisions for how do you approve public art are applicable to Overlake as well. They had specifically only called out Marymore. We wanted to make sure that it was the same process. There's a couple of other things about open space as we've been reviewing. That just got updated. You've got a new version in there. And the landscaping, again, you've just got a slightly new version. But I will say, remember, there's more work coming in the 2025 package on both of those chapters. So right now, we're just trying to get approval for the 2024 package and know that there's going to be quite a bit more work coming. So there's some things about In the parking ratios for single-family and middle housing, we've just removed the maximum. We've added a provision for minimum number of ADA parking spaces. There was a lot of concern from our disability stakeholders that we don't have enough ADA parking, and the requirements are based on the percentage of the total. And so I just added some provisions in there to make sure at minimum you have a certain number of spaces. And so there's just a provision in there to make sure that we don't eliminate ADA parking. And then we had some requests a couple years ago, and we were trying to figure out the right place to put this about long-term bicycle parking. So that is reflected in 2140 as well. And so there's a number of clarifications. The state had changed the electric vehicle spaces, so we just are updating to make sure the electric vehicle code matches the state changes. And then there's a view corridor currently in 2142 that goes straight through the Redmond Technology Station. That's not applicable anymore. We're removing that. So again, you can see that the types of changes that you're seeing are just cleanup. They're really just kind of making sure that all works together. There is one thing that we did want to throw out here. It is in your packet, but it's one that we were like, well, okay, here's a change that we could do. Microsoft had asked us to look at a change in 2148 for the TDR program. And so currently right now, the TDR program limits the use to add one additional story. And so the edit in the omnibus.
Sorry, could you, the acronym TDR?
Oh, sorry, transfer of development rights.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
yes, so transfer of development rights is a way that you can protect areas that you don't want development by selling the rights to that development to develop somewhere else, right? So the program, the way it is written is now is you can use TDRs to go up one story, but you can't use it to go up 4 stories or 6 stories or whatever. It's just only 1 story. In Overlake, what we did is we said you can, right now you have to choose either or, the incentive program or the TDR program. We said you can use both if you receive a certain number of points on the incentive program, and I think we set it at 100 points. You can just use both, and you can add your TDRs and utilize them, and then that decreases the amount of incentives you need to do to get to where you want to be. What we have in your packet for discussion, and you can talk about it tonight, or we can talk about it a little bit more next week as you think about it, is the potential to say, if you're within a TOD focus area, maybe you can go up to 2 stories with your TDRs. But again, you can use it in combination with the incentive program as well. It just, using of the TDRs allows you to do less of the incentives to get where you need to be. So you see that in there.
Is there anyone who's in a position to benefit from that other than Microsoft, or is it a very Microsoft-specific request?
There are other TDR holders, but the TDR program has not been in extensive use recently. We have identified that we need to update the TDR program. We had initially hoped that it would be a part of the Redmond 2050 scope, but it didn't make it. There's just too much to get in right now. So we have identified that after we close out, that's one of the things that we do need to do. We need to go in and make sure that it works for everybody. But Microsoft does hold quite a few TDR credits, but they're not the only ones still have TDR credits.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a couple of other things going in through here. There's the permit fee exemption provision for affordable housing just got refined, that language. We're removing the Willows Rose Hill demonstration project. Again, we don't need it anymore. It's kind of out of date. There's some decision criteria for comprehensive plan amendments that just is updating it. And we have some new definitions, and we have amended definitions. And this kind of goes back to some conversations we've had recently. And in this packet, there are new definitions for small business, legacy business, and locally owned business, which I know is a planning commission ask. So our economic development folks have put in those new. However, please know that they're still working on a few things, and so those definitions may be updated again next year as they're doing a lot of programmatic things this year, so we've got the new economic development strategic plan and whatnot. So We don't have a lot of their code adopted yet, and so normally we don't like regulatory language in definitions, but because they don't have their code adopted yet, their definitions look a little different for right now. So please know that those definitions might change as we actually adopt their code revisions next year.
And at that point, we would review those again to remove them?
Right, we would just remove all the regulatory language, and the definition would just be the basics, but nothing about sizing or anything like that. That would actually be in the code pieces.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, Commissioner Aparna.
I actually have some questions, Chair. Are we ready for questions?
Yes, that went through my list. I'm opening.
Great. Commissioner Aparna.
So affordable commercial, I see a definition there. For the rest of the crew, affordable commercial is an incentive that reduces the market rate retail space by a percentage with a minimum term length. The deeper the reduction from market rate and longer the term, the more incentive percentage points received. A minimum total square feet offered at reduced rate must also be met. So my question, follow-up question is, because it specifies retail space, would it also technically include spaces for nonprofits or daycares? And
That is a really good point. I do know that when we talk about an affordable commercial, we are not looking at just retail. So let me go back. I'll put that on the issues matrix for sure, and I'll go back and talk to our folks and make sure if that's not the word we need in there.
Right. Thank you. And then the next part of that is, what is that minimum discount percentage that would make it affordable? I know that's a tricky one, but like in my head, I went to what we know as familiar, which is residential, affordable, 80% AMI. So is it like 80% of the market rate, or like it, or is that too much? I don't know, but is there a starting point for that?
I'll put that as also in there on the issues matrix. I do know that that is intended to be the code. And right now, we're working on that as from an incentive perspective, but they are actually doing some code work that will come forward, and that will be a part of the regulations for affordable commercial.
Okay.
But I will ask and see if they have something that they can add to the issues matrix to expand on that for right now.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to go back to my question from before about the Catalyst project incentives on page 138. So my question was about the City Hall Outpost Agreement, which is new. And I wanted to make sure that that covered a request that I heard from council about adding places to stash or cache emergency supplies. And I'm hoping it's the same thing, but if not, I want to make sure that emergency supplies piece is included if possible.
Let me double check here really quickly, because it technically is a separate item, but I think it is in there somewhere else as well. So under building site form and uses, here, I'll zoom up a little bit. It's actually in here, emergency management staging storage agreement.
Wonderful. So what is the City Hall Outpost?
So the city knows that we need additional services and access to services in Overlake. And so for a number of years, they've been looking to have like a mini city hall type of space. And so we're working currently on that. Parks Department provided us, there's a reason why the space is there, is because Parks decided, okay, as a facilities management, how much space would they need? And they gave us the direction. So that's in the incentive program based on the definitions that they gave us. I don't know if you have any additional information you want to add.
Yeah, I wanted to add, not specifically to the code revisions, but last night there was a study session at City Council, and as part of the proposed capital investment program, or what we call the CIP budget, there was a proposal to buy property at the new, the name has changed, but it's called the Bellwether Building in Overlake, and the city's going to purchase what we call a condo, but it's like a piece of the building to have like a city hall annex. So for more information on that, I would refer back to the council meeting last night on the CIP discussion. There's a little bit more context on that. It's kind of related to this, but not somewhat. But just wanted to, that's what I was going to try to note, was there is a plan for that in the city's
Great.
budget.
And then there's still a need for the incentive as well?
Yes, I would just think so.
Yes, because it's slightly different needs. And so we're trying to make sure that, and it will be one of those that dies out. It's not going to be forever.
Yep.
But the spatial requirements and the pre-approval process, they'll have to get parks facilities approval to earn that incentive to make sure that they meet all the requirements for space. But yeah, I anticipate maybe only having one more. Since we have the Bellwether project, we might only need one other additional space. And it might be more of something like a kiosk type space where we can have information and maybe a customer service desk or something like that. Because a lot of that will go in, the more extensive will go into the Bellwether purchase space, so.
Thank you. That was a great answer. Commissioner Aparna. I'm waiting for more hands, but for the moment, you can go again, and then we'll
Okay.
trade off.
So next stop, affordable housing. So affordable housing in neighborhood residential zones. I maybe have mistaken, but I don't think we've seen that before, correct? So, because we only saw the one for Overlake. And I see that it's at least 12.5% of units in new developments shall be made affordable to households earning up to 80% AMI. Now, what does a new development entail? Is there like a size, or is there a number of units? If a lot is subdivided, what does that, I couldn't understand what that meant. And what if there are ADUs? Is that part of it? Like if we're allowed to build maybe 2 ADUs in our lot?
Can you point me to exactly which section you're referring to, just to make sure?
That would be page 285 to 295. I think it's a whole section on it.
Okay.
I don't know the exact.
Okay.
Does that help? I don't know.
Yes, so this is a new proposal. And so what I would recommend, in order to make sure I capture all of your questions, if you could email me all of your questions about this new section. Ian is on vacation this week, but when he gets back, I'll have him fill in the answers, and he will be here for the public hearing, and he can dive into that a little bit deeper. But yes, this is a new section.
Sounds good. And Ian would not want to come back if I start asking
Be nice.
But it would be helpful if you emailed them, just so I make sure I capture all of the questions the way you, yeah.
So I actually also have a comment on that section. I just really like the way that rounding is handled in the affordable housing sections for both neighborhood residential and neighborhood multifamily. So this is when there wasn't a way to evenly divide something by 8. Instead, the plan is to ask for fee in lieu. And so I thought that was great that the city went into that level of detail and that there's a plan and it's not something that will be argued differently each time. I really appreciated being in writing in the code. So I just wanted to commend that decision. It seems reasonable to me, and I'm really glad that it's there.
Okay.
Commissioner Coleman.
I don't want to cover this here, but I had a question on transportation and I didn't ask it. Can I ask that?
Sure.
So
Is this a transportation element?
Yes.
Yes.
So in the element, and as I've sort of read through it, I don't see anything around a last mile statement to light rail. I see a statement around, it talks about development around light rail, but not access to light rail specifically in any of the sort of language. And I'm thinking about last mile from partly where we live, but just around the whole of Redmond. Because there's another statement in this there that says 49% of, I think it says something like 49% of households are less than 10 minutes from a frequent transit place, which means 51% are not, right? The opposite. So I'm just wondering about the connectivity aspect and if there's anything that should be put in there around that. Because I know we talked about that in the Redmond 2050, but that last mile to light rail doesn't seem to be in any part of it that I can see, and I may have missed it.
Okay, I will put that in the issues matrix, and I'll talk to our transportation planning folks and see, maybe it's there, but it's not using the terminology that like pops out at you. Yeah. or maybe we missed it. But I'll go back and I'll talk to our transportation planning folks.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me go back.
Commissioner Parna.
CR 31 actually talks about including better first mile, last mile access to transit. CR 31. It's, sometimes you have to look in the other places.
Yeah, but part of my question as well was actually about access. So the numbers don't seem to be odd to me. There's no target for, we want to increase access from 49% to 80% by X time, right? And I don't see that. I see a current number. Maybe again, or maybe I'm missing.
Oh, and that wouldn't necessarily, that would not usually be in a policy per se. We don't tend to include those sort of numbers in the policies.
So
But your point is still important.
yeah, the transportation master plan, functional plan is still in the process of being updated. And that's where that level of specificity would come in. So I will ask them if that is, if there is a specific goal or a target that we're working for that would end up in that document. So I'll ask, but we'll make sure both questions are asked of our transportation folks.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in here with one last before I hand it back over to you. So I had a question about a map in figure 21.12.510.c. It was on page 127 about Overlake, and there were main roads, and there were colors, and then there were lots that were lettered, and I had no idea what that map was meant to represent. And I can't tell, there are tables before and after, but not much text, so I couldn't tell if it was supposed to relate to the tables or if it's saying
Yes.
something else. But I was just, the colors don't match up. I was utterly lost.
So I apologize for that. Our transportation folks managed to replace one of those maps, so the 510B has been replaced. The other maps will get swapped out, and it will be with the same format, so it'll be easier to understand. But yes, the map goes with the table, and they relate back to each other. So
There were different numbers of colors in the different map, in the map and the different tables, which was also confusing me.
I didn't realize that. Well, I'll go back and double check. But yeah, the map itself will not have colors anymore. It'll just be, this is a type D, and then the table below type D, and so we can go through. And so, so what it is it's trying to say that if you have a frontage on that type of road, we want this type of setback, or we want a build-to line, or we need this type of sidewalk furniture, or whatever. So it's just trying to relate how the building relates to the street based on that actual street frontage. And what we're trying to do is separate a little bit, and this is like the first stage, and you'll see more in 2025 code updates. So we may only need like 10 road types, but we may need 15 public realm types, right? And so that we can refine a little bit how we want that sidewalk in the public area to look and feel. But the street isn't going to change. The dimensions aren't going to change. The lane widths are going to not change. But how we actually interact with that will need to be a little bit different in these areas. So this is, what we're seeing in Overlake, unfortunately, is like the first scrape of the barrel of trying to move in that direction. And I understand it's not perfect, and I apologize for that. But these maps in here that are still in color will get swapped out eventually. The same data, but it will be in the other format, which is easier to understand.
Great. So my only comment on that then is that sounds like very important information, and so maybe a little bit of supportive text would be wonderful.
I think we have some up at the front, but let me go back and actually see what we can do to make that more clear.
Thank you.
I'll put that in the
Yeah, I was just having trouble following.
Yep.
Commissioner Parna.
I have other questions, but I'll keep it to the last one in the interest of time. And this is a favorite topic for everybody here, is I know that we discussed the maximum area for a single-family home, and council wanted something else. So I'm not sure what we're supposed to do. Are we supposed to revisit the numbers? Or are we supposed to not say anything at all? I mean, I don't know what we're supposed to do with that.
That is a very good question. Let me talk to my director.
Thank you, and provide more guidance.
Thank you. Yeah, and also
Appreciate it.
clarity on the subgrade development piece, because if
Okay.
if that is, unfinished, whatever that unfinished basement subgrade development piece was, which council wanted to tag on, I would have reservations about that. So if that's a separate comment, we'll put that in later.
Yes. The thing is, my understanding is generally we can continue to provide feedback if we, but it's very difficult. So more guidance would be wonderful. Are there additional comments? All right, so I think what I would say is if anyone is doing additional passes and would like to email anything to Becky, because we're on sort of a compressed time frame at this point, if you could ever do it by the end of this weekend, that will give her some time to put it together for the next packet and the public hearing.
Yeah, at the very latest, the end of the day Monday. But if you could get it in by the beginning of the day Monday, that would be perfect. And then that allows us time to figure out who we need to talk to get the answers in there.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for your time. All right, next up is staff and commissioner updates. Glenn.
Not too many updates, just first to note, the liaisons rotate quarterly, so Ian will be the liaison for, well, I know I'm here tonight, but July, August, and September. Also to note that it is our hope that the August meetings, which are the 14th and the 28th, can be canceled, but that's with the assumption that the material for this month, including, the public hearing and some of the different recommendations, like an omnibus package, et cetera, can be concluded. So just wanted to note that. And if Becky wanted to add anything additional?
Yeah, I do want to add what I mentioned, the addendum that Kim's going to bring forward to you, because it is something that we need to get moving forward to, and because it is such a small edit, what we're hoping to do is have the public hearing and still get the planning commission recommendation in July. And again, it's just a clarification of projects that are, when you get vested and all of that. So she's already advertised for the public hearing. It will be at your next meeting, and then we hope on July 31st to get the recommendation.
Yeah, and that was also, I should have noted that we have two additional, besides our regular scheduled meeting on July 24th, we have an additional meeting on the 31st. So we hope that compensates for be able to cancel the August meetings. So.
And everyone's done a very nice job recently letting me know ahead of time if you won't be here. I'm sorry, was there one more?
There was a request from Vice Director Allen. Do you want to make a comment? Deputy Director.
Thank you, Glenn. Sorry, everyone. I just wanted to also remind the Planning Commission that there's Derby Days this weekend, and looking forward to your participation, and just want to say thank you. And also wanted to apologize for not being there in person tonight, and also appreciate you all for the first item and the good discussion and where we were able to get at the end. So just wanted to make a note of that as well before you ended tonight.
Thank you. I just, before I open it to other commissioner updates, I do just want to say thank you to Glenn for doing such a nice job for the last few months. It is a lot of work to handle all of our questions and keep us on the right track, so thank you for your work. One other piece is that I just want to mention that I did talk to Councilmember Stewart today, who also reiterated some years Planning Commission and Council have had a joint booth at Derby Days. That didn't happen this year, but she's very interested in future opportunities to get together. So I just wanted to relay that because she wanted us to know that that's important to them in the future. All right, other commissioner updates or staff updates.
I just have one more. In September, once you get back from your break, we're going to start introducing all of the 2025 code package. So we're going to start the discussions on downtown, Marymoor, the design standard updates, all of the things that we wanted to do for the complete communities and whatnot. So we're going to be introducing all of that and just walking you through where the direction that we're going in September. And then we're going to start having heavy-duty study sessions in October. So we're getting a lot moving forward, so just be prepared for another set of really interesting heavy-duty conversations this fall. A lot of technical stuff, I apologize. It'll be another really big package when you get to adoption. But I think it'll be really interesting. I know a lot of the topics are things that you've all been looking forward to, so you'll start to see that as soon as you come back from your break.
Lovely. Anyone else? Commissioner Coleman.
I just want to kind of wrap it up and say a little bit, from starting on the Redmond 2050 commission or whatever it was in November 2020 and seeing that omnibus come today, it was quite a thing for me to see. I just want to thank everybody on the staff for getting it where it is. It's actually amazing to have seen it where it started and where it is right now. So I just want to congratulate all of you in terms of putting all that together. Amazing.
That's a lovely note to end on. I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Then we're adjourned.